What is up, NFL Nation? I know it's me, it's Nick Belsky. We're always talking Pittsburgh Steelers, but we are super excited to welcome you all to the first episode of All NFL Talk, our weekly program that will run down the 5 biggest headlines in the entire NFL as we give you guys insight and our thoughts on what is happening around the league. You can find us on youtube.com/all NFL talk. You can find all of our written work all over on SI. And then you could find our Pittsburgh Steelers podcast on youtube.com/all Steelers talk. Nick, this is something we've had in the makings. We're super pumped to get this thing rolling. We've been super pumped to get this thing rolling, expand our horizons a little bit. How are you feeling? Excitement level for this one as high as mine maybe right now?
Yeah, I'm jacked up to get this started. I'm super excited. We couldn't have started it on a better week. I mean, the week right before the opening of NFL free agency, the week after the NFL Combine, where you were dipping, ducking, diving, dodging fists left and right at the Starbucks in Indy. It's a perfect time to launch this. So I'm excited to break down some really, honestly, massive stories that we've had over the past week.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I just came from Starbucks. Nobody was verbally or physically harmed, which is great. Security was not called. And I'm excited for that storyline to continue probably for the rest of time, as we always think of Ian Rappaport and George Schultz as we walk into any coffee facility as an NFL writer. But what we will do here is break down, as I said, the top 5 stories in the NFL, give you guys our insights. This will come to you every single Tuesday here on our All NFL Talk YouTube channel and anywhere that you get your podcasts. So let's dive into it. We're starting with Matthew Stafford sticking with the Los Angeles Rams after plenty of excitement. I mean, we have talked to every team in the book. Every team in the book has reached out to Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams just to test the market, see what his value is, see what they would need to give up in order to get him. A case that I believe at the beginning you looked at and said, this probably isn't that real. This is just a tactic to see what his value should be so that the Rams can pay him. It turned out that there was some pretty significant interest from teams like the New York Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders. But he stays in LA. He takes what everybody is saying is a significant pay bump. We do not know what that number is yet. In your head, was he ever leaving? Your reaction to this, and after that, we'll talk where the Giants and Raiders, they go next with this one.
Yeah, I would have been surprised if he was going anywhere, because you look at the LA Rams and they're in a division right now where if they keep Stafford, which they ended up doing, they are the clear-cut favorites. I mean, is Seattle going to surpass them with Matt Stafford on their roster? No. Is San Francisco going to be able to bounce back? That's a major question mark, and I don't think anybody believes the Arizona Cardinals are close enough to where they're going to be able to overtake a Los Angeles Rams team that has seemingly rebooted their defense on the fly and just needs to have a decent offense to be one of the players and the big contenders in the entire NFC. So it felt like if they were going to trade him, it would have been simply because they felt they needed to take a step back. They needed to kind of retool and rebuild, because nobody on the open market, nobody else on the trade market, and nobody in the NFL draft would get you anywhere close to Matthew Stafford. There's a reason there was so much interest in this guy, because if he's available, he is miles better than anybody else that is available on the open market, whether that's Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, etc. Matt Stafford is the guy. You look at everybody else and you say, yeah, there's some upside there, but Stafford was a couple plays away from taking the Rams to the NFC Championship after beating the eventual champions potentially in their building. So I think you look at the Rams, and I'm not shocked that they eventually were able to get a deal done to where Stafford can stay in LA and they can push this contention window a little bit further.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look at teams that are in the hunt do not remove themselves from the hunt. The Rams have done everything they possibly can for the last X number of years to say we are Super Bowl contenders and we are remaining Super Bowl contenders. They are the founders of screw the picks, and they're not going back now. Matthew Stafford was the key piece to that. I think the fact that he took somewhat of a hometown discount speaks volumes of what he's able to do. Also, kind of gives you an understanding of where the Rams are, because they understand that they're contenders, but they also understand that to stay contenders, you have to be smart. You can't just give everybody everything they're asking for. There has to be give and take so that you could have a team that can go out there and compete. And that's what essentially Stafford did here by not taking as big of a deal with both the Giants or the Raiders, which is what you ask next is, where do they go? Because they were all in. They wanted Stafford. They were willing to give up anything to go get Matthew Stafford. Now both of them are probably candidates to trade with the Tennessee Titans to move up to number 1 in the NFL draft. You have guys like Aaron Rodgers. You have guys like Russell Wilson. You have guys like Sam Darnold who will not be franchise tagged. Where do they go? Where do you see the Giants and the Raiders going next?
Yeah, I think both of them are candidates, like you mentioned, to move up with the Tennessee Titans. But the answer is, I don't know. There's so many different directions that teams, especially those two, can go in right now. And I think it was Adam Schefter of ESPN last week that said, this is what's holding everything up. Matt Stafford is holding everything up. So when that news came down the pike, you had to look around and say, all right, what is the next shoe to drop? Because this could get very, very exciting very fast on the QB carousel. But I think if you're looking at the Giants, if you're looking at the Raiders, they're both teams that I think would probably rather have a veteran option at their disposal, because you look at this draft and you're going to have to give up a lot to move up to take that Titans pick. And I'm not sure that those teams are in position where they shouldn't give up a lot to move up and take the quarterback, because I don't think the support system is there on either of these teams. So I think that veterans make more sense for the Giants and the Raiders. Whether or not that's what they'll do, that remains to be seen. But I feel like they need to look at the veteran market, guys like Darnold, guys like maybe Cousins if he does shake loose from Atlanta, and guys like Russell Wilson.
So can I lay out a scenario and get your opinion on this one?
Please do.
Aaron Rodgers to the Giants, okay? Which sounds, whatever. But Aaron Rodgers to the Giants. They're looking for a veteran. They want a veteran. He brings Davante Adams with him to New York. So he now is throwing the football to Malik Neighbors and Davante Adams with a team that, don't get me wrong, stinks. But he's throwing the football to Davante Adams and Malik Neighbors. He's got, obviously fans are excited. And then maybe, just maybe, the Raiders, maybe the Jets move themselves up to that number 1 pick, and 1-2 is a quarterback. You want to know who's picking 3? The New York Giants. And who can they go out and get? No other than Travis Hunter. You're telling me Malik Neighbors, Travis Hunter, Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers. Your thoughts?
It would be entertaining. I'm not exactly sure how good it would be, but certainly must watch every single Sunday.
I agree. I mean, you talk about, that's all you're looking for in the top 5 is flash. That's what you could get. All right, let's talk Deebo Samuel's traded to the Washington Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Washington takes on his entire $17 million deal. Jaden Daniels gets himself another weapon. Deebo tweets out yesterday or 2 days ago, something like that. I'm 225 pounds, man, in shape, ready to go. New bow, new year. I mean, he was a guy that you knew he wasn't going for more than a 5th. You knew teams were going to be interested, but you didn't know how much was left in the tank. You still don't. Coming off a down year, but a down year for probably everybody in San Francisco. Deebo to Washington. Does it help them at all? Are they more of a contender now with a new wide receiver?
Oh, 100%. I think this helps them a lot, and I think it's a great move for them because it's low risk. Like you mentioned, it's a 5th-round pick, and you're paying them $21 million in 2025, but they had money to move. Like, they had money to use. You have a rookie quarterback under center. So with that in mind, you can go out and spend a little frivolously on a player that's probably not worth the money that you're paying him. But I mean, you have to credit everybody in that organization. You have to credit Josh Harris. You have to credit Adam Peters, the general manager. You have to credit Dan Quinn, because in 2 years, this went from an insignificant franchise to a destination for everybody. Because if it wasn't Deebo Samuel, you have to imagine somebody else would have went there. They wanted a wide receiver. They were going to go out and get a wide receiver because they've been very aggressive under this new regime. And people want to go play with Jaden Daniels. And that's part of it. But I think the other part of it is there's a commitment to winning there that hasn't been in the DC area in a very long time. So you have to credit the ownership, the general manager, and the coaching, because how quickly have they turned around the entire aura of that franchise in Washington. And then last year being essentially year one, and they get to the NFC Championship. I feel like it's only up from here, especially with a rookie quarterback turned sophomore quarterback in Jaden Daniels that everybody expects to be able to follow up in 2025.
Are they real contenders right now in your eyes to beat the Eagles?
I think we need to see how the Eagles shape up, because we're going to talk about one of the moves they made. I mean, their roster is going to be very different. And you would have to imagine the Commanders saw where they were lacked in that playoff game, in that NFC Championship. And you have to imagine they're going to try to address that. So by the end of the summer, I think there's a real possibility. I think that door is well open, especially considering that Jaden Daniels could be even better in year two. I know it's hard to imagine, but that jump from rookie to sophomore sometimes is drastic. If he's able to do that, I see no reason why they wouldn't be considered one of the top teams in the NFC and potentially a favorite alongside the Eagles.
I agree. I look at it and say that defense has been invested in. They got to find a cornerback, but they have defensive front help that they've been looking at. I would imagine they add more this offseason. They have the offense. They have Deebo. They have Brian Robinson. This is a loaded draft class. If you're thinking I'm going to go get another running back, they have the quarterback. They have the coach. They have the coordinators. The offensive line doesn't look terrible. I mean, it's got some improvements within it, but it looks like it's got the building blocks. I agree. I don't know where Philadelphia is going to be. I will say this, that it is very difficult to surpass Philadelphia right now. They have a lot of contracts. Yeah, they have a lot of contracts, but they're set up in a place where they might be able to make a lot of these contracts work. And if they do, you are the same threat. You know, you could look at this and say they have so many young pieces that they might have another year in them where this team still is this loaded and they could keep it going. Your expectations for Deebo in 2020, is this a comeback? Is Deebo on his way back, or is this a Terry McLaurin still better be wide receiver one by a good bit?
I think Terry McLaurin is still going to be the bona fide number one, but I think this is an opportunity for Deebo getting out of the environment that built him up to be a number one and built him up to be a superstar in this league, and moving to a team in which I think will be utilizing him very well. I mean, Deebo isn't what he used to be as far as being a gadget player, but if there's anybody that's going to be able to get as much out of him as possible, it's Cliff Kingsbury. So I believe that he's going to be able to settle into a number two role, something that he was kind of, I don't want to say fighting for, but kind of jockeying for position with Brandon Ayuk. And of course, it was the San Francisco offense. So he's jockeying with George Kittle. He's jockeying with Christian McCaffrey. I think he'll be more featured in this Commanders offense than he was in San Francisco. But with that in mind, there's a clear hierarchy here, and it's Scary Terry, and then it's Deebo.
And then it's Deebo. I agree with that. I think they also have some other pieces that I would imagine they add this offseason that makes that offense pretty loaded, but a good move for sure with the Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. The Bengals kept their wide receiver in Tee Higgins, a second back-to-back franchise tag for him. He's set to make $26.1 million this offseason, or this season. He was going to make well over that if he hit the free agency market. He's probably not happy about it. Jamar Chase said that he's not happy about it. Joe Burrow has made it very known that he wants everybody to have a deal. The Bengals still have to work out Trey Hendrickson somehow and Jamar Chase, who they're trying to sign. I mean, things are not looking great. The Bengals say that this is their opportunity to continue to hunt for a long-term deal. I don't know how much I agree with that. You look at Tee Higgins, you look at the Bengals. Do you feel as bad for him as maybe a lot of NFL fans do?
No, I feel horrible for him. And this is exactly where the business of the NFL comes into play, because the only reason they did this was to buy time, because the Bengals knew the second he hit the open market, they were not going to be able to bring him back. So they said, we have to do this and hope that we can figure something out. Now, do I have faith that they're going to be able to figure something out? No, because this conversation has been going on for multiple years, but you have to feel for Tee Higgins, because he knows the second that he would have reached free agency that he would have been making honestly probably 30 to 40% more than he's going to make in 2025. And he'd have a little bit more security because it wouldn't be on a 1-year deal. So he's clearly not going to be happy with this. And it's just another indication that this is a last chance for the Cincinnati Bengals, because last year they lost Joe Mixon on offense. They lost Tyler Boyd on offense, and their defense took so many steps back. And now they're just trying like hell to keep the band together and still need to figure out some of those opposite ends of the ball. Some offensive line stuff is still in the air. They just released Alex Kappa. So this is a kind of desperation move in my eyes by the Cincinnati Bengals to try to keep the band together as long as they possibly can.
I agree. I definitely agree. First off, Tee Higgins is $35 million on the free agency market, if not more, because there are going to be teams that want wide receivers. He's probably getting $75-80 million of that guaranteed, which is now off the table for him. And just like you said, the Bengals are, this is it. This is what they got left. And honestly, I don't think they have enough in the tank. You can't go win a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Tee Higgins. Like, you need Trey Hendrickson. You need some corners. You just got rid of Mike Hilton and let him go. You need to figure out the rest of your defensive line, which is banged up. You need some safeties like this. The Bengals were a team that had a window, and that window was red hot. It was it was wide open for them, and they took advantage of it. And then they couldn't beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, which was it Tom Brady?
That was Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford in the Super Bowl. They couldn't beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. And after that, if Joe Burrow doesn't get hurt, that window is open. But Joe Burrow got hurt, and their window of opportunity closed in the meantime, or got very close to shut. I just don't see them as a real contender right now. And they got issues.
Yeah, they have to outscore their problems every single week. And shoot, at the end of 2024, it worked, right? They won however many games in a row. They came close to the playoffs, but that's not something that you can do over a full season and succeed. Nope. And I don't think that's something that you can do in the playoffs, especially when you look at these teams. I mean, why was it that the Kansas City Chiefs got back to the Super Bowl? Because their defense played well when it mattered most. I don't know if I could count on the Cincinnati Bengals defense to play well when it matters most, especially now that they moved on from Lou Anarumo. Like, I feel like he was somebody that could get the most out of a defense. I'm not sure I trust their new defensive coordinator to be able to do the same thing, because he's clearly not going to have the same items at his disposal, the same players at his disposal. So I look at this and I'm saying, hey, that's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off. And if you're going to do it, sure, Joe Burrow is one of the few guys in the league you might be able to do it with, but that is a tough road to travel if you're trying to do that in the NFL in 2025.
I agree. What are the chances that they realize their mistakes and how screwed they are and they trade them? You still put that on the table?
I would still put that on the table, because I think at this point, Tee Higgins could maybe play hardball in those negotiations and be like, listen, I don't want to re-sign here because of the way that you've treated me, tagging me 2 years in a row. And if the team struggles again out the gate, I have a hard time believing Tee Higgins is going to be like, yeah, let me just ride out this season, potentially injure myself and ruin the money that you've already taken away from me.
I agree, which brings us to the New England Patriots, who are all in on a wide receiver and were all in on Tee Higgins. They were ready. They were ready to go. They were ready to spend way too much money on a guy who's coming off a banged up season. And now they're looking at everywhere else. If Tee Higgins is available for trade, I would imagine that the New England Patriots are one of the first teams that give Cincinnati a phone call and just say, look, man, what do we got to give you that isn't the 4th pick in the NFL draft? Anything else we are willing to go with, and we will make this thing happen. They want wide receivers. They're looking at Davante Adams. They're looking at Cooper Kupp, who may be available. I mean, you got to get somebody for Drake May. Your top options right now for the New England Patriots as all in to go find a wideout for their quarterback.
I mean, when I'm looking at them right now, their options are very limited. They're not going to use that number 4 overall pick on a wide receiver as much as
unless Travis Hunter falls.
Yeah, but at the same time, are you taking Travis Hunter, or are you going to try to protect Drake May a little bit? I feel like they are destined to draft an offensive lineman at 4, even if Travis Hunter is there, because you look at the back end, and Hunter, in my eyes, is projected to be a better corner than he is a wide receiver. You have one of the best young cornerbacks in the NFL and Christian Gonzalez. So
True.
I feel like they're going to draft an O-line at 4, which leaves them with very little by way of bringing in weapons for Drake May. I think that you're probably looking at one of those veterans if they shake loose, a guy like an Amari Cooper who's already headed into the free agent market, or like a guy like Davante Adams, if he wants to go somewhere and say, you know what, I want a young buck. I don't want to just be Aaron Rodgers' sidecar for the last years of my career. I want to go up to New England and kind of start anew with, Drake May and everything going up there. So I think they're going to have to look for one of those big name veterans to bring him anything. But I think that the biggest thing they wanted was Tee Higgins, and I'm not sure there's anything that they're going to go above and beyond to get this offseason.
Yeah, I could see Davante Adams is going to cost too much money. And I don't think that they're looking for Davante Adams. Like, as much as I think that would be a good move, I could see Chris Godwin. I could see Chris Godwin being a name that they look at and say he's 29 years old and somebody that is incredibly reliable and definitely has a couple more years left, and we'll pay him. He could come to New England and work with a young quarterback and a great head coach, because Mike Vrabel is going to be able to attract guys to New England. He's going to have that pull with free agents. I could see Chris Godwin as a name. I don't think anybody left on the market is like incredibly like splashy. There's no, oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy went this place, because that's what's happened is the NFL went through the phase. They always go through the phases of like the Kenny Galladay, who was out there and everybody was like, this is the next guy. We're going to pay him so much money. No, now the NFL is like, these guys are actually really good, but we're not getting fooled. We're not diving into players who aren't bona fide, no questions asked superstars. Chris Godwin is a star. He is a bona fide, no questions asked star. I think he could be on their market. I think Cooper Kupp makes a lot of sense for New England. An easy trade for them to go acquire if they're looking for that, hopefully be able to pay him. And that is a reliable set of hands for Drake May, which is what you're looking for. Go get him somebody who could be his best friend in 16 games, 15 games, whatever Cooper Kupp's willing to give you. And I think Cooper Kupp does make a lot of sense. I don't know if Davante, he does, but he comes with a lot of attention. And I don't know if the Patriots are looking for that. Chris Godwin is a guy who I've never heard a negative headline about, and could be a name that they're looking at.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense with the guys that they have in the building already. You look at Jalen Polk, you look at Kayshon Boutte, more Boutte than Polk in last year's season, but they're guys that you want to bring along and you think that there's a lot of potential in them. And Chris Godwin is somebody who can say, hey, listen, there's not going to be a lot of eyes on us, but that doesn't mean that what we're doing doesn't count. So I think that's somebody that could really kind of boost a lot of that young talent that they have. And I'm looking at them probably as a team that's going to bring in somebody again in the draft at the wide receiver position, just not at that number 4 overall pick.
No, I agree. What about Marquise Brown as not the first signing they make, but maybe the second? A guy who's 27 years old, who has some career left, and who is fast, who provides a deep threat for Drake May's rocket arm. And just to say, he doesn't stink. He hasn't made it in the NFL as a star, as the guy that they thought he was, that Baltimore thought he'd be when they drafted him, and then what Arizona thought he'd be when they traded him for a first-round pick, but maybe they could get him cheap.
I feel like they're already going to be stocked up at that point. I think if you bring in a 1, whether that be Godwin or Kupp or whoever we've talked about, I think they're going to want to give a lot of opportunity to, if they draft somebody this year, to Polk, to Boutte. I think that those are the players that they're going to want to see a lot of playing time for, and they're going to want them to grow with May, because then you can kind of figure out who he works best with. If you bring in a guy like Marquise Brown, you might elevate it for this year, but you might be taken away from what you can get in 2026 and 2027. And after all, this is the Patriots we're talking about. They have to be playing the long game at this point.
They do. And luckily, Mike Vrabel's a guy that Robert Kraft isn't firing 2 coaches in back-to-back years. Vrabel's got some time to put this thing together. All right, let's wrap this up with Darius Slay. The Eagles have announced that they're moving on from their all-pro cornerback at 34 years old. Slay says he's got 1 more season left in him, could return to the Philadelphia Eagles on a lesser deal, which is what he did 2 years ago. Fooled the entire NFL for 48 hours. Everybody was thrilled. Darius Slay's available. Where's he going to go? Is he going to go to the Steelers, the Lions, wherever? Went back to the Eagles on a cheaper deal. Could happen again, definitely. has also made it known that the Lions are a team he's interested in. Would be very cool to watch him go back to Detroit and finish his career there. I mean, even at 34 years old, does he top the cornerback market right now?
There's certainly an argument to be made. The thing is, the cornerback market might be the best in free agency. I think there's an argument to be made at the very least. I mean, you look at Javarius Ward, you look at DJ Reed, you look at Byron Murphy. There's a lot of talent out there, but I have a hard time not putting Darius Slay among them. I know he's 34 years old, which even saying that, it's wild to me because of the play that he was able to have with the Philadelphia Eagles. But you have to imagine that everybody that was looking at those three already in the top of the cornerback market took a step back and said, hold on, we need to look into Darius Slay and see if he would be interested and what that looks like as far as contract, because he's a guy that, yeah, he doesn't have the splash anymore. You mentioned before the show, I don't think he had an interception last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, but the guy is still a very good cornerback. He's able to lock down when he needs to lock down, and he brings a lot of good experience to whoever needs him. I mean, the guy has a Super Bowl ring. That goes very, very far in a lot of these locker rooms and a lot of these front offices. So I have a hard time believing he won't be among the top names for anybody searching for a cornerback here in the next week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Darius Slay, is the guy, remains a guy for any team. He doesn't walk into a locker room, no matter who your corners are, and come off the bench. That's not what he's doing. He's not Patrick Peterson at the end of his career or whoever else you'd like to name to say, maybe they had one more good year in them. No. Darius Slay is a guy that will start to finish as long as he's healthy for whatever team he plays for, and will most likely be their cornerback one, because that is how good he is. I think Detroit makes a ton of sense for him. I think going back to Philly makes a ton of sense for them. I'll toss some sleepers out there that if he's looking for a cheap deal, which I don't know if he is, could make a lot of sense. Minnesota is definitely one of them. Him and Brian Flores' defense might be electric. And I mean, they have had success with corners in the past. Recently, you just mentioned one who's on the free agency market. Maybe Slay's the guy that replaces him. Kansas City needs a corner. They have needed a corner. They could definitely go out there and get a corner. And Baltimore needs a corner next to Nate Wiggins, and they don't pick high enough in the draft to probably get one. So you might look at it and say, that's a guy that could fit really well with a young group of defensive backs and replace Brandon Stevens.
Not to state the obvious, but there's a common theme in all three of those teams that you just mentioned. They're all playoff teams, and most of them are considered Super Bowl contenders going into next season. Darius Slay, I mean, I don't want to speak for the guy because obviously we're always pro player. Go get your money. If that's what you want, go get it. But at this stage of his career, the dude's made a lot of money. The dude is also set up well for his post-playing career because he has a marketable name. Seems like if he's going to go anywhere, he's going to probably want to hunt for another Super Bowl. And Baltimore makes, like you said, that makes way too much sense for him to go to Baltimore and be opposite Nate Wiggins. I think that is a team that, since you said it, is now just going to be rattling in my mind until next Tuesday, when inevitably we get the Schefter or Rappaport or Schultz report that says Darius Slay going down to the AFC North and joining up with Nate Wiggins in that Baltimore Ravens defense.
Yeah, I agree. Or he's heading back to Philadelphia or wherever he ends up, but I would not be surprised. Baltimore is in there. As soon as he got released, my brain went, man, Baltimore would be a good fit for this guy. Good fit for this guy. He would make a lot of sense to help develop a Nate Wiggins. And if they get a younger guy, that's a perfect 1, 2, 3 for a team that desperately needs a corner and desperately needed a corner in 2024. All right. That's everything on our agenda today. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to the first episode ever of All NFL Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine. This is Nick Belsky. We will be back every Tuesday to break down the biggest news in the NFL. Until then, enjoy the offseason. Next Tuesday starts free agency, and things are just getting started. We'll be back soon. Peace.